Hello, family. Welcome to Tales with Auntie Ingo. This story will take you on an emotional journey of kindness, endurance, and the unexpected twists of fate. If you love authentic African folk tales, please don't forget to subscribe and leave a like for us. It will mean a lot to us. Thank you as you do so. Relax and enjoy. Once upon a time, in the village of Omoko, surrounded by tall palm trees and golden fields, there lived a kind girl named Azuka. She had bright, curious eyes, a soft voice, and a heart filled with warmth. But life had never been easy for her. Azuka's mother had died when she was very young. She didn't remember much about her, but sometimes when she closed her eyes at night, she could almost feel her mother's warm arms around her. The only thing she had left was a small old wrapper, her mother's favorite. It still carried the faint scent of her mother's soap, and every night Azuka would wrap it around herself and whisper, "Mama, I miss you." Her father, Obi, was a hardworking farmer, a man who spent more time in the fields than at home. He remarried a woman named Nkem, hoping Azuka would have a mother again that would care for her. But Nkem was nothing like her real mother. Instead of love, Nkem gave Azuka nothing but hard work. From sunrise to sunset, Azuka fetched water from the stream, cooked meals, cleaned the entire compound, and pounded yam for the family. She scrubbed the floors until her small hands ached. But no matter how much she worked, it was never enough for Nkem, her stepmother. Meanwhile, Nkem's own daughter, Amara, did nothing. She wore fine clothes, ate the best food, and spent her days playing with friends while Azuka slaved away. At night, when she was finally done with her chores, Azuka would sit alone in the backyard looking up at the stars. "Mama, why did you leave me?" she would whisper, tears rolling down her cheeks. She never cried in front of others. She knew no one would care. Despite everything, Azuka never let bitterness enter her heart. She was kind to everyone, even when no one was kind to her. One day, while returning from the stream, she saw an old woman struggling with a heavy basket of firewood. Without hesitation, she set down her own load and rushed to help. The old woman's eyes softened. "Thank you, my child. The world needs more hearts like yours. May kindness follow you wherever you go." Another time, she saw a small boy crying, lost and afraid. She knelt beside him, wiped his tears, and gently held his hand. "Don't worry, little one. I will take you home." The boy's mother was overwhelmed with gratitude, showering Azuka with blessings. Azuka was known to be very respectful and kind. She greeted people with respect and ensured that she rendered a helping hand to whoever needs it. Azuka even helped the village weaver, an elderly man who struggled to carry his rolls of fabric. "You remind me of my own daughter," he told her one day, tears glistening in his eyes. "She was kind, just like you." Even when village boys mocked her, calling her the servant girl or laughing at her worn clothes, Azuka never fought back. She simply smiled and continued her work. But the more love she gave, the harsher her stepmother became. Nkem hated Azuka's goodness. She hated how the villagers smiled at her. She hated how, even in rags, Azuka still had a beauty that came from within. One morning, Nkem handed Azuka a small dry piece of yam while giving Amara a full plate of rice and stew. Azuka's stomach growled as she looked at the tiny piece of food. "Mother, I'm hungry too. Please, can I get more food?" she said softly. Nkem scowled. "Then eat the air. If you are truly your mother's daughter, you will survive." Amara giggled, stuffing another spoonful into her mouth. Azuka bit her lip, fighting back tears. She turned away, whispering, Mama, I wish you were here. At night, when Obi was away on long farming trips, Nkem would give Azuka nothing but a cup of water before sending her to bed hungry. But Azuka never complained. She just curled up with her mother's wrapper and prayed. One evening, something happened that changed everything. It was the night of the village feast, a celebration where food overflowed and laughter filled the air. Nkem, as one of the women in charge, prepared large bowls of soup, steaming hot yam and sweet palm wine. Azuka's mouth watered as she carried heavy pots back and forth. The scent of roasted meat filled the air, but she knew she would not get a single bite. When the feast began, she was told by her stepmother, Nkem, to sit outside away from the gathering. She could hear the drums, the clinking of calabashes, and the laughter of the villagers enjoying their meals. Then, an elder woman from the village, one of the same people Azuka had helped before, noticed her sitting alone. Child, have you eaten? She asked. Azuka shook her head, embarrassed. The woman frowned and whispered, Come with me. Carefully, she led Azuka into the back of the feast, away from prying eyes, and gave her a plate of food. You deserve this, she said with a kind smile. Azuka's heart swelled with gratitude as she took a small bite. It was the best meal she had ever tasted. But just as she swallowed her first bite, a sharp voice cut through the air. Azuka! She turned to see Onkem standing in the doorway, her eyes blazing with fury. How dare you eat the food meant for guests? Nkem grabbed the plate from her hands, throwing it to the ground. Ungrateful child, you have brought shame to this family. She dragged her by the ear to a small room in their hut. The villagers fell silent. They had never seen Onkem so angry before. You will be punished for this, she hissed. Tomorrow, before the sun rises, you will go into the forest and fetch me a pot of water from the deepest part of the stream. If you do not return before midday, do not return at all. Azuka's blood ran cold. Everyone knew the deepest part of the forest was dangerous. Wild animals lurked in the shadows, and many who went there never returned. She wanted to protest, but she knew it was useless. She bowed her head and whispered, Yes, mother. As she walked away, tears burned in her eyes, but she held her mother's wrapper close, hoping it would give her strength. Little did she know, this journey would change her life forever. That night, Azuka could not sleep. She lay curled on her small mat in the kitchen, gripping her mother's wrapper tightly. The darkness around her felt heavier than usual, pressing against her like an invisible force. The deepest part of the forest, she whispered. Everyone in the village knew that part of the forest was dangerous. The trees were so tall and thick that even sunlight struggled to reach the ground. The path was overgrown, twisted with roots like old, bony fingers. Strange noises filled the air at night, hoots, rustles, and sometimes eerie howls that no one could explain. Some said spirits lived there, others said wild animals roamed freely. But Azuka had no choice. She closed her eyes and whispered, Mama, give me strength. Before the first cock crowed, Azuka was already on her way. The village was still asleep. The only sounds were the distant croaks of frogs and the occasional rustling of palm leaves in the early morning breeze. She carried a clay pot, carefully balanced on her head, as she walked barefoot toward the forest path. As she stepped into the trees, the warm air of the village was quickly replaced by a cool, damp silence. The deeper she went, the quieter it became. Even the birds seemed to stop singing. Her heart pounded. Every shadow looked like something watching her. She stepped carefully over roots and ducked under thick vines, trying to move as quickly as she could. Then, suddenly, snap! A branch cracked loudly behind her. Azuka spun around, her breath caught in her throat. Nothing, just trees and shadows. She swallowed hard and forced herself to keep moving. After what felt like hours, she reached the deepest part of the stream. The water was dark, still, and eerily quiet. Even the wind did not seem to move here. Azuka bent down, feeling her pot carefully. As she lifted it, she heard something, a soft, weak voice. Help me. Azuka's eyes widened. She turned slowly, her heart hammering. There, half hidden behind a tree, was an old woman. Her clothes were torn, her hands covered in scratches, and her face looked pale, almost ghostly. Azuka hesitated. The village elders always warned about spirits in the forest, about creatures that could trick people by taking human forms. But something in the woman's eyes stopped her from running. She looked real, and she looked helpless. Please, the woman whispered. I have not eaten for days. I cannot move. Azuka took a slow step forward. What happened to you? She asked. The woman coughed. I was gathering herbs for medicine when I fell and hurt my leg. I have been here ever since. Azuka's heart squeezed. She thought of all the times she had been hungry, all the times she had wished someone would help her. She could not leave this woman here to die. Without thinking, she set down her pot and knelt beside the woman. Hold on to me, she said. I will help you. The woman's hands were cold as she gripped Azuka's shoulders. Slowly, carefully, Azuka helped her stand. It was not easy. The woman was weak, and the path was uneven. But Azuka did not complain. She guided the woman to a fallen tree and helped her sit. Then, reaching into a small bag, Azuka pulled out a piece of dry yam she had saved from the night before. Eat this, she said softly. The woman's eyes filled with tears. You are a rare child, she whispered. She ate slowly, each bite small and careful. Azuka waited patiently, glancing at the sky. The sun was rising. She had to return soon, or Onkem would be furious. When the woman finished eating, she smiled at Azuka. Because of your kindness, I will give you a gift, she said. She reached into the folds of her tattered wrapper and pulled out something small and delicate, a beaded necklace. The beads shimmered in the dim light, glowing softly like tiny stars. Wear this always, the woman said. It will bring you what your heart desires most. Azuka hesitated. I do not need anything, she said. I only wanted to help. The woman chuckled softly. That is why you deserve it. She pressed the necklace into Azuka's hand. Azuka stared at it, feeling warmth spread through her fingers. She did not understand why, but she felt safe. Azuka hurried back, balancing the heavy pot on her head. Her feet ached, her arms were sore, but her heart felt light. When she reached home, the sun was already high. Nkem was waiting. Her eyes narrowed when she saw Azuka. You are late, she snapped. Did you bring the water? Azuka nodded, setting the pot down carefully. Nkem frowned. She had expected Azuka to fail, to come back empty-handed, weeping and ashamed. But Azuka stood tall. Then Nkem's eyes fell on the necklace around Azuka's neck. Her face twisted. Where did you get that? She demanded. Azuka hesitated. It was a gift, she said simply. Nkem's lips pressed into a thin line. She did not believe her. But before she could say anything, Amara spoke. Mother, it is beautiful, she whined. I want one too. Nkem's eyes gleamed. She turned back to Azuka, her expression dark and thoughtful. Azuka felt a chill run down her spine. She did not know why, but she had a bad feeling. She gripped the necklace tighter. Something told her this was only the beginning. That night, Azuka lay on her mat, the beaded necklace warm against her skin. Every time she touched it, she felt a strange sense of comfort, as if someone was watching over her. But she could not shake the uneasy feeling from earlier. Her stepmother had been staring at her all evening, her eyes dark with something Azuka couldn't understand: jealousy, greed, something dangerous. Azuka closed her eyes, gripping her mother's wrapper. She did not know why, but she was afraid. That night, Nakem called Amara into the small hut where she stored her fine clothes and jewelry. She sat on a wooden stool, a deep frown on her face. "Did you see that necklace?" she asked, her voice low. Amara, who was brushing her thick hair, pouted. "Yes," she huffed, "and it's not fair. Azuka has nothing. She wears old clothes and sleeps in the kitchen. Why should she get something so beautiful?" Nkem's lips curled into a cold smile. "Then we must take it from her." Amara's eyes lit up. "How?" Nkem leaned closer. "You will go to the forest, just like she did." Amara's face fell. "The deep forest?" she whispered. "But mother, that place is cursed." Nkem grabbed Amara's chin, forcing her to look at her. "Do you want the necklace or not?" Amara swallowed hard. Then, slowly, she nodded. The next morning, Nkem prepared Amara as if she were going to a festival. She dressed her in her finest wrapper, tied her hair with golden beads, and even gave her a small bag of food in case she was hungry and needed to eat something. "Walk the same path Azuka did," Nkem instructed. "Find the same stream. If you see an old woman, help her. And when she gives you a gift, bring it back to me." Amara smirked, adjusting her beaded anklets. "If Azuka could do it, then it will be easy for me." But she was wrong. The journey to the deep forest was long and difficult. The sun was hot, the path rough, and Amara was not used to walking long distances. She groaned as her feet ached. When she finally reached the forest, she hesitated. The air here was colder, the trees thicker. The birds did not chirp. Something about it felt wrong. Still, she pushed forward. She reached the stream, just like Azuka had. But when she bent down to fill her pot, she heard a voice. "Help me." She turned quickly. There, half hidden behind a tree, was the same old woman. Her clothes were torn, her hands scratched. "I have not eaten for days," the woman whispered. "Please, help me." Amara wrinkled her nose. The woman looked filthy. Her skin was covered in dirt and her hair was tangled. Amara took a step back. "Why should I?" she scoffed. "You are not my problem." The old woman's tired eyes met hers. "Please, my child." Amara crossed her arms. "I don't help beggars. Besides, the food I have is just for one. I cannot give you my food and be starved." "I am in a hurry," Amara continued. "I need to meet with the rich old woman that is giving out glowing beaded necklaces. I do not need people like you to delay me." Then she turned and walked away. She did not see the old woman's sad smile. She did not see the way the trees seemed to close in behind her. She did not hear the soft whisper of the wind. "You have chosen your path." When Amara returned to the village, she was furious. "There was no gift, no necklace, nothing," she yelled, throwing down her empty pots. Nkem frowned. "Are you sure you did everything as I told you?" Amara hesitated. She did not tell her mother about the old woman. She did not want to admit that she had refused to help her. So instead she lied. "Yes, I did everything. It must have been Azuka's trick. She is hiding something." Nkem's face darkened. Her anger turned to Azuka, and that was when she made her decision. "If she won't give us the necklace," she whispered, "then we will take it." That night, while Azuka was fast asleep, Nkem crept into the kitchen. She moved quietly, her eyes locked on the small beaded necklace that glowed softly around Azuka's neck. Slowly, she reached out. Her fingers brushed the beads. A sharp wind suddenly rushed through the room. Nkem gasped, stumbling back. Azuka stirred, her eyes opened. For a moment, the two stared at each other. Then Azuka's eyes fell on her stepmother's outstretched hand. She touched her necklace protectively. "What are you doing?" she whispered. Nkem's face twisted into a snarl. "That necklace does not belong to you." Azuka sat up. It was a gift. Nkem's hands curled into fists. "Take it off." Azuka shook her head. For the first time, she saw it clearly. Her stepmother was not just cruel, she was dangerous. And Azuka would not give her the necklace. No. Nkem lunged. She grabbed for the necklace, yanking hard. Azuka cried out as pain shot through her neck, and then a bright light filled the room. A wind stronger than before knocked Nkem back, sending her sprawling to the ground. The walls trembled, the floor shook, and then silence. Azuka's hands trembled as she touched the necklace. It was warm, pulsing, as if it was alive. She looked down at Nkem. Her stepmother was shaking, staring at her with wide, fearful eyes. What are you?" she whispered. Azuka did not know, but something told her she was no longer just a helpless girl. She was something more, and her life was about to change forever. Azuka sat frozen on her mat, the warmth of the necklace against her skin now feeling stronger, almost alive. Nkem, still sprawled on the ground, was breathing heavily, her face pale with shock. The wind had stopped. The night was still again, but something had changed. Azuka could feel it. She touched the beads lightly, and for a brief moment, a memory flashed through her mind. A woman's voice, software, gentle, familiar. "My child, you are stronger than you know." Azuka gasped, her hand flying to her chest. That voice, it sounded like her mother. But how? Nkem scrambled back, her eyes wide with fear. "Witchcraft," she whispered, her voice shaky. Azuka's stomach twisted. "I'm not a witch," she said softly. Nkem shook her head. "That necklace, it is evil." Azuka looked down at the necklace. Number. She didn't believe that. She had felt warmth when she wore it, not darkness. She had felt her mother's presence. She had felt safe. But Nkem was not convinced. She stood up quickly, her lips pressing into a thin line. "This is not over." And with that, she turned and stormed out of the room. Azuka exhaled shakily, her fingers tightening around the beads. She had a feeling her stepmother would not stop until the necklace was hers, and that terrified her. That evening, as Azuka fetched water from the stream, she felt a presence behind her. She turned quickly and gasped. It was the old woman, the same one she had helped. But something was different. Her back was no longer bent. Her skin, once wrinkled, looked smooth. Her eyes, once tired, now glowed with wisdom. Azuka's breath caught. Who? Who are you?" she whispered. The woman smiled. "You already know, my child." And suddenly, Azuka understood. The woman had never been just an old beggar. She had been something else, something powerful, something watching. "The necklace," Azuka whispered, touching it lightly. The woman nodded. "It belonged to someone before you, someone who loved you dearly." Azuka's heart pounded. "My mother?" The woman smiled. "Yes." Tears filled Azuka's eyes. "Why was it given to me?" The woman stepped closer, placing a hand on Azuka's shoulder. "Because your heart is pure. Because kindness should never go unrewarded." Azuka swallowed the lump in her throat. She had spent so many years feeling powerless, feeling lost, and now she had something real, something that had belonged to her mother, and she would not let anyone take it from her. But Nkem was not done. That night, she called Amara into her room. She locked the door behind them, her face dark with anger. "The girl is becoming too powerful," she hissed. "We must get rid of her." Amara's eyes widened. "Get rid of her?" she whispered. Nkem's lips curled. "Yes, and I know exactly how." She pulled out a small vial from under her bed. A dark liquid swirled inside. Amara swallowed hard. "What is that?" Nkem's voice was cold. "Poison!" Amara gasped. "Mother, no, that is too much." Nkem grabbed her wrist. "Do you want her to take everything from us? If she keeps that necklace, she will be greater than us, more powerful. And your father," Nkem's voice broke, "he will love her more than you." Amara hesitated. For years, she had been spoiled, given the best food, the best clothes, but deep down, she had always known her mother was cruel. She had always known Azuka did not deserve the pain she was given. And now she had a choice: to follow her mother or to stop her. The next day, Nkem did something she had never done before. She invited Azuka to eat with them. Azuka hesitated. This had never happened before. But Amara smiled at her, almost nervously. "Come, sister," she said. "Eat with us." Azuka felt something was wrong, but she was tired of fighting. She sat. Nkem placed a bowl of soup in front of her. "You have worked so hard, Azuka," she said sweetly. "You deserve this." Azuka stared at her food. She felt her mother's voice whisper in her ear. Something was not right. Her fingers brushed the necklace. Then Amara slapped the bowl away. The soup spilled across the floor. Azuka gasped. Nkem screamed. Amara turned to Azuka, her eyes wide. "It was poison," she whispered. Silence. Then Nkem lunged at Amara. "You fool!" she shrieked. "You ruined everything!" Azuka stood quickly, stepping between them. "Enough!" Nkem froze. There was something in Azuka's voice, something strong, something powerful, something unbreakable. Azuka touched her necklace. A sudden wind rushed through the room. Nkem stumbled back, fear in her eyes. "You will never hurt me again," Azuka said softly. The next morning, the village was different after hearing what happened in the Obi's family. People no longer whispered about Azuka in fear. They whispered in awe, in respect. Nkem had never known fear like this before. She had controlled everything for years. She had humiliated Azuka, made her life miserable, treated her like she was nothing. And yet, now, standing before Azuka, watching the way the wind seemed to swirl around her, seeing the way the necklace glowed ever so slightly against her chest, Nkem knew she had lost forever. Her heart pounded. Her breath came in short, panicked gasps. She had one choice: to run. And so she did. Without looking back, without taking anything, she ran out of the house, stumbling into the darkness. The village was quiet as she passed, but she could feel the eyes of the people watching her, whispering. She didn't care. She just needed to get away. Away from Azuka, away from the daughter she had once controlled, away from the child who now stood taller than her, not in size, but in strength. No one knows exactly what happened to Nkem after that night. Some say she fled to another village. Some say she lost herself in the wilderness. And some believe that the spirits of the forest, the very ones she had disrespected with her wickedness, claimed her. But whatever happened, one thing was certain: she never came back. Amara sat still for a long time after her mother ran away. She had known her mother was cruel, but she had never imagined she would go this far. Poison? killing her own stepdaughter. The guilt felt like a heavy stone on her chest. Azuka looked at her, studying her stepsister carefully. Would she follow her mother? Would she continue the cruelty? Or would she choose something different? Slowly, Amara lifted her eyes, and for the first time in her life, she spoke without pride. Azuka, I am sorry. Her voice was quiet, honest, real. Azuka could have been cruel. She could have turned away, just as Amara had always done to her. But Azuka was not Ankem. She had never been, and she never would be. She took a deep breath, then reached out a hand. Come, let's fix things. Amara's lips trembled. She hesitated for only a moment. Then she took Azuka's hand, and just like that, everything changed. Life in the village became different after that. Azuka was no longer the servant girl. She was no longer the one they mocked, the one they looked down upon. She was loved. The same villagers who once whispered about her now greeted her with warmth. The same people who ignored her now admired her. And Amara, she changed too. At first, people didn't trust her. They thought she would be like her mother. But Amara worked hard to prove them wrong. She apologized to those she had wronged. She helped Azuka with the chores. She learned kindness. And for the first time in her life, she found happiness. Their father, who had always been too blind to see the truth, finally opened his eyes. He wept as he held Azuka close. Forgive me, my child. I should have protected you. Azuka smiled, hugging him back. You see me now, that's all that matters. Her father made sure Azuka would never suffer again. She had food, she had warmth, she had love, and in her heart, she felt it. Her mother was watching. She was proud, she was happy, and she was smiling down on her daughter, who had never lost her kindness, no matter how cruel the world had been. Moral of the story: no matter how hard life gets, never let the world turn you cruel. Kindness is the strongest magic of all. If you love this story, don't forget to subscribe for more African folktales filled with drama, suspense, and deep life lessons.